Hey guys, it's Miss Vinian for Imperialism Part 2. This is the last video in the Progressivism and Imperialism unit for Unit 2. So if we look at our learning targets, we have what were the benefits / consequences of America becoming an imperialistic nation. That is going to be your essential question. And we're still on this learning target, explain the causes of American imperialism in the late 19th and early 20th century and evaluate the effects. So you should already be able to put the causes down because we already did that in day 1 in video 1. And so now we're going to look at what are some of the effects on some of the other countries and what does this mean for America. Alright, so starting here, we last left off with the Spanish-American War ending, and we helped the Filipinos, we helped them get rid of Spain. However, they were outraged to find out that the U.S. did not intend to grant their independence. And if you can remember from class, we discussed how the Philippines were a very important stop on the way to East Africa and for controlling markets in the Pacific Ocean. So the Filipinos were outraged that the U.S. didn't give them their independence, and they would not get their independence until 1946 from America. So when the Filipinos and America, when this happened, the Filipinos basically waged war against America, and it lasted 3 years. 20,000 Filipinos died, 4,000 of the U.S. troops died, and like I said, we needed Philippines for easier access to China. And technically, obviously, we all know this is not right, that America has promised, hey, we will help you win your independence, and then not giving them their independence. So it's just an example of American imperialism, kind of what the causes and effects of this are. It was good for America because we gained easier access to China, but it's bad for the Filipinos because they lost their identity and their ability to be independent. Okay, so there's some examples of yellow journalism during the Philippine-American War. Okay, so moving on, China. Okay, so once we have this market for China, what's going on with China? So when imperialism first starts up, they have what they call the spheres of influence, and that is one of your vocab words, so make sure you know it. And basically, it's where European nations divide up China for trading purposes. So they basically take spots of China and they divide it up, and they only trade with those spots. Okay, so these are European nations, so this does not include the United States. So, of course, America is like, hey, we need to get in on this action. So in 1899, John Hay, the Secretary of State, he said, you know, these nations are taking advantage of China. So number one, he said that all Chinese coastal ports should be open to all countries, that it's not fair that you divide China up. Number two, that China should not have special privileges for any trading nations, and that Chinese should keep their independence, which is a really great thing for the Chinese. However, John Hay never actually talked to the Chinese about this, and so basically you see the United States getting involved with China over the right to trade with China. So there's some good and bad things here, because good things are that China is going to be able to keep its independence. Bad things are that the United States has kind of put their weight in this so that they could have a hand in China. And just so everybody knows, China was never asked about any of these things. So when we think spheres of influence, I want you to think these are the European nations that divided up China for trading purposes. Okay, and so then the open door policy, which is the title of this PowerPoint slide, is what John Hay said. The open door policy is these 3 things right here. Now, just because one nation says it doesn't mean all nations are going to follow it. Specifically, like I said, we didn't even talk to China about this. Okay. Now, because of this, China is not so happy with Western influence. Okay. You have European nations and America coming in trying to say this is how you should do things. This is who you should trade with. This is what you should do. So during this time, there's a group of Chinese, and they're known as the Boxers, and they want to get rid of all Western influence from China. Okay, because if you think of the world with the hemispheres, you have the Western and the Eastern hemisphere. Europe and North America are in the West, and Asia obviously is in the East. So anybody that's Western, they do not like. So the rebellion was very violent, actually, and they went through and they killed anybody who supported Western influence or was from the West. And the Americans and the Europeans did not want to put up with this, so they basically join together, and they basically go over there and they put the rebellion down. And they, if you look, these are captured Boxer prisoners guarded by soldiers of the 6th United States Cavalry. So people who were taken prisoner by Western forces, these are Boxers. Okay. So just so you know, think about, like, the Boxer Rebellion happened because of foreign involvement in China. So it's kind of a tricky time right now at what we're going to be discussing in China, because they are kind of being pulled from every direction and everybody kind of wants a piece of China. Okay, here's some more pictures from the Boxer Rebellion. These are people's heads on the ground. It was a very violent rebellion, as you can tell. Okay, so why did we come up with this open door policy? Things that we believed in. Number one, America believed that the growth of the American economy depended on exports. Okay, so things that we are sending out to other countries. Two, America had the right to intervene abroad to keep foreign markets open. If there was a country who was closing its markets off, then America felt like during this imperialistic time they had the right to intervene. And three, a fear that closing of an area to American products could threaten U.S. survival. So these are the reasons why America basically went forward with this open door policy and made it so that China could not trade with certain people, just certain people. They had to trade with everybody. Okay, so America has a world power. Basically, you have the Great White Fleet. So this is a new all-sail fleet of a dozen or so ships that Teddy Roosevelt just sent them around the world, and he painted them white. This is to show U.S. dominance. This is where we talk about Teddy Roosevelt and his, it's called gunboat diplomacy. Basically, these are gunboats, and it's kind of like threatening. We talked about in one of the classes, you know, Teddy Roosevelt's very nice, and he's like, hey guys, we're all going to get along, but he has this big navy behind him. Basically, if you don't get along with him, what's going to happen? Okay, he sends these around as kind of a threat and kind of to let people know America is on the top, okay? And America, like, you need to listen to what they say. And that kind of goes along with what we had talked about in the last video about whoever owns the seas owns the world, okay? So this is Great White Fleet is going to kind of be the, like, patrolling, like they go on a parade throughout the world to just kind of show off people. So if you look, this is their world tour, and if you see the places they stopped in very specific marketing ports where exports and imports were shipped, and just kind of like to say, hey guys, look at America, here we are, look how awesome we are. Okay, so we're going to quickly go down through the presidents and talk about what kind of diplomacy they had. Like, how did they, when you deal with diplomacy, that's like how you deal with other countries. Okay, so Roosevelt in Latin America. First of all, Roosevelt had gunboat diplomacy. So he used force to accomplish goals in the world, especially in Latin America. That's kind of like what I was just talking about. They always said, he said, speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far. That basically means that I'm going to be nice to you, and I'm going to say, how are you? How's your family? And that makes me seem really nice, right? Right. But say I had a gun in my hand, and I was like, how are you? How's your family? Then that would be a little bit more threatening. So TR is this really nice guy. Look, he's smiling in this picture, but he's about to, like, basically chop the head off of this turkey. And if you can see in the turkey's feathers, it's got the South American and Latin American countries on them. Okay, so speak softly and carry a big stick. It's TR. Whoa, sorry. And so he believed in using force. Okay. William Howard Taft, who is president after, if you'll remember, he's a trust buster, dollar diplomacy. Basically, instead of using force, he used money. Okay, and so this is how they kind of put their imperialistic ways into their administration. So they invest money into a country to help strengthen that country's economy in hopes of preventing a revolution. But by investing money, it normally meant U.S. corporations in Latin American countries. So it's nice to think, and if you think about what we talked about, what were examples of imperialism and what are non-examples of imperialism, basically, like, he's investing money to a country, he's putting U.S. businesses in there, which offers jobs to those countries, but that money is going back to the U.S. It's not really benefiting that country. So it's kind of tying that country to the United States. Okay, so this dollar diplomacy. And setting up U.S. businesses is what he meant by investing money. And then finally we come to Woodrow Wilson in Latin America. So they call this moral diplomacy. So we had 3 different types. We have gunboat, we use force; dollar diplomacy, we use money; and moral diplomacy. And this is going to be a transitioning time for America, because Wilson's going to believe that we should extend moral standards to foreign policy, that the U.S. should not take over territories that already have legitimate governments set up, and that the only reason that we should send troops in is to stop revolutions. So this is like a complete 180 of what Teddy Roosevelt thought. Teddy Roosevelt thought, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to use force to take over these countries. Okay? Where on the other end, Wilson says we do not need to disrupt these countries unless there's a reason they have revolutions. We need to leave these countries alone. We're going to think about our moral standards and apply that to foreign policy. Awesome. Okay, so some achievements during imperialism. The U.S. expanded access to foreign markets to ensure economic growth, so this is really good. So I know I've been kind of negative, but there's a lot of good things that happened during imperialism. We built our modern Navy, which is going to boost us to world power, and it protects our interests. We become an international police force to ensure domestic dominance in Latin America, which is not technically a good thing that we're in an international police force. We're going to learn more about that next class. And then, like I said, the U.S. becomes a world power. Now, we are going to be going through some political cartoons, and I want you to be thinking about political cartoons and basically what political cartoon you would like to do. And I'll show you some in class when we get there. But really quickly, there's just a couple more slides. Roosevelt in Latin America, more things that occurred. Back in 1823, President James Monroe told, basically he had the Monroe Doctrine, and he told European nations, this is a doctrine that he wrote out, stay out of the Western Hemisphere. America is going to take care of the Western Hemisphere. And so this is going to be what Roosevelt takes that from 1823 and he kind of makes it his own. We call it the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Basically, he's just stating this doctrine that James Monroe had already written. And basically, it's saying that it calls for the U.S. to be a policeman for the hemisphere, of the Western Hemisphere. Okay? And how does he do that? So Latin America's in debt, and he uses this Roosevelt Corollary to pay off the debts. So he says, hey, Latin America, we're going to pay off all your debts. And he basically does that so that the European countries will not come down and get involved in Latin America. We do not want, Americans do not want Europe to come down to Latin America. And if we think of Latin America, it's basically Central America and Southern America. Central America and South America, sorry. This causes tension between Latin America and America because Roosevelt, yeah, he paid off the debts, but now he feels like he has power, and he goes down and kind of polices the area and sends military down into Latin America, where Latin America never even asked for their debts to be paid off. Okay, so this is America getting more involved to the south. Another thing that Roosevelt does is he takes over the Panama Canal, which was being built by the French and kind of abandoned. And basically, the Panama Canal is built to connect Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So this, if they could connect the two, it would cut the travel time of the U.S. ships by half. Panama was the province of Colombia, and so Panama, TR helps the Panamanians get their independence from Colombia so that he can get control of the canal. Okay, and so basically Teddy Roosevelt gets credit for all of this. If you look, this is Central America, okay, and so this is where the canal will fit through. Okay, and the U.S. gives control of the Panama Canal back to Panama not until the 1970s. We'll talk a little bit more about that in class because we're going to watch these 2 videos. Okay, and I think that's it. Here's some, I'm going to leave you with some political cartoons that I want you to be thinking about. These are political cartoons that were created by my students last year. It's one of my favorite ones. This is Zoe Saldana, and this is about the open door policy. And I want you to think about these because you're going to be making your own. Okay? Love this one. Tapped. And this one is about the Great White Fleet. And lastly, we're going to end with this one. This one is about the spheres of influence. Okay? So make sure that you write your left sides in summaries and be ready for your DIRT quiz in class. This is your last video before your test. So that gives 5 videos for this test. So, go back and review if you need to, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!